were formed in few months. 12. But don't think about 12 large armies. The number of fighting men in all the armies, the total number of all the armies was 10,000 men. So some armies had less than 1,000, and they were facing all of Arabia. Some of the armies they faced were so huge. Khalid ibn al-Walid was leading the battle of Yamama. The Muslims in Yamama were 3,000. Musaylim al-Kadhdab had 100,000. And in less than 1 year, Arabia was back to Islam. When did this happen in history? Has this ever happened that a civilization would collapse and within 1 year it would come back? Did this ever happen in history? Brothers and sisters, we're talking about something unique, something different. This is Islam. This is not a regular deen or a regular army or a regular civilization. This is Islam. And not only that, the next year, the 12th year of Hijrah, I told you, they started to attack the largest nations on earth. It's like a small city like Medina, within 2 years attacks Moscow and Washington. This is the scale of what we're talking about. This is history, proven history. This is known. So, moving quickly. 12th year of Hijrah was the attack. 14th was the collapse of the Persians. 15th was the collapse of the Romans. By the year 92, Muslims were already in Spain. 95 already in France. Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, rahimahullah ta'ala, had a plan. Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi was one of those who attacked France. Had a plan. A very strange plan. Very few people know about it. I've described this all in my other series, Tareq Al-Andalus, the history of Al-Andalus. See, Muslims were able to spread east, and they were able to spread west. When they moved north, they were stopped by Istanbul. 600 years they could not conquer it. So the Muslims were stopped north. They could not conquer Europe because of Constantinople. So Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi said, I will attack Istanbul from the west. I will conquer Europe from the west and attack Europe from the west, from Spain, France, and so on. Until he was stopped by the Umayyad Khalif, because he was going to go through the whole of Europe, which had an army not less than 7 million, and his army was about 2,400. He was going for it. But the Khalifa stopped him. He said, no, this is too dangerous. Wallahi, I don't know if he would have let him go. Maybe. Anyway, but within less than 100 years, who had the largest area as a nation? The Muslims. Who had the largest army? The Muslims. Who was leading science and math and astronomy and every area of life? Philosophy, logic, whatever. Poetry, etc., etc., etc. Who was doing that? The Muslims. Who had the best of civilization? The Muslims. So remember when we talked about the Romans, the Persians, the Spanish, etc. Took hundreds of years until they peaked. The Muslims took less than 100. Of course, if I had longer time, I would have gone into more details to you, but time is short. So let me go quickly. And Islam continued to peak. Muslims were spreading even more. Civilization was built even more. Europe was in the dark ages. And Muslims were so creative that they started the new art of medicine. Really, medicine did not really start, except on our hands. Mathematics, the invention of the zero, suddenly changed the world, etc., etc. In every area of life, Muslims peaked. And that continued and continued until Muslims stopped doing jihad. They stopped doing jihad. And the rulers of Islam became so occupied with materialistic things. They were so busy with she-slaves, music, kinds of food. One of them would spend 1,000 golden dinars to buy a hat, etc. That is how they lived. They were so rich, they were so powerful, nobody can challenge them. They had the best civilization, strongest armies, so they rested. Instead of continuing to rule the world and guide the world, they stopped and became busy with themselves. That is when the enemies of Islam noticed. Let me tell you a story. How did they notice? They were watching. One of the strange stories that happened in Spain. Muslims conquered Spain and southern France. France was still strong. It was trying to come back into Spain. So the French leader was sending spies to see the situation of Muslims in Spain. Can we attack it? So they would cross the mountains, see the Muslims at the villages on the border, and come back, see the situation among them. The story goes like this. He sent some spies. They crossed the borders and they found a young man, 16 years old, crying like a girl. So they talked to him, said, "Son, why are you crying?" He said, "My mother did not let me join the Muslim army until I finish memorizing the Quran. And I want to join the army now. I want to make jihad now." See, they were not crying because nobody provided them with an internet access. Or did not buy a car for them. So they went back and told their leaders. He said, "There is no way to attack such a nation. You cannot attack such a nation." About 30 years later, he sent a spy. And he found across the border a young man, crying, 16 years old, crying. He said, "Son, why are you crying?" He said, "My mother refused to buy me a she-slave."